Hey, everybody. Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be focusing on the Dutch language.
Sounds good.
Not just, the words and stuff like that, but we're going to be really trying to unpack the story it tells,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
about the people and their history and the whole journey. So we've got this great stack of articles and excerpts and all that stuff. And I'm curious to dig into this with you.
Yeah.
For example, did you know that the word Dutch itself
Right.
has this really kind of surprising origin?
Yeah, it's really
It
fascinating.
reveals a lot about its identity,
Yeah.
where it came from.
For sure, Dutch can be traced back to this Proto-Germanic term,
Oh, wow.
"Schudeskaz,"
Yeah.
meaning of the people.
Of the people.
Mhm.
That's kind of a cool
Yeah.
way to think about this language.
Yeah.
So, we're talking way back, early Middle Ages.
Right.
Latin was the big language, right?
Exactly. Latin was the dominant language, in official documents, church,
Yeah.
all the fancy stuff,
All the fancy
the
stuff.
important
That's
stuff.
the thing.
So, how did Dutch emerge as this
Well,
different thing?
it's a great question, and that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah.
Latin was for, the scholars, the elite,
Right.
but Dutch was really bubbling up as the language of, everyday folks.
So, the real people.
For real people on the street, in the marketplace, on the farms, in the homes.
I like that.
Yeah.
Almost the difference between, formal language and then slang today.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't stuffy pronouncements or whatever it was,
Yeah.
lively, conversations and stories. And
Absolutely.
I'm curious, back then, did those early Dutch speakers ever feel like they were kind of going against the grain or
Oh, yeah, for sure.
using a language that wasn't as prestigious?
That's a great question, and that kind of speaks to, how Dutch carved its own path.
You see, one of the things that I think is so remarkable about Dutch is how much it resisted
Uh-huh.
these major shifts that transformed other Germanic languages.
Wait, so you mean it didn't go through the same changes as English or German?
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
What made it so stubborn?
Right.
It's Dutch was no, we're going to hold on to who we are.
Yeah.
And, all these other, linguistic cousins are going through these makeovers, and Dutch is nope, this is us. And so it maintained this remarkable consistency,
Right.
preserving its unique characteristics.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did we go from, this language of the people to
Yeah.
what we know today is standardized Dutch?
Well, there must have been some key moments, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So a pivotal moment was during the late Middle Ages.
Okay.
And dialects from Flanders and Brabant,
Uh-huh.
two very important regions, started to converge.
So they were kind of meeting in the middle a little bit.
Yeah, they're coming together. They're finding some common ground.
Yeah.
And so this standardization process really played a major role
Okay.
in shaping the Dutch that we know today.
So it wasn't just about resisting change. It was also about
Yeah.
finding that common ground and forging this shared
Exactly.
linguistic identity.
Which is a beautiful thing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But how far did it reach? How far did this new unified Dutch reach?
It's spoken today in Belgium
Oh, wow.
by millions as an official language.
Wow,
And
right,
its
wow.
reach extends far beyond Europe, too, thanks to the Netherlands' history of exploration and trade.
Yeah.
Dutch has kind of left its mark in these surprising corners of the world.
Wow. So Dutch wasn't content to stay at home.
No.
It went on adventures and sailed the seas and
That's right.
planted these little linguistic seeds
Exactly.
in far off lands.
It did.
This is really a language with a story to tell.
It is.
I bet there's some cool examples
Oh,
of,
for sure.
Dutch words popping up in unexpected places.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, for instance, did you know that Indonesian, which, was under Dutch rule for centuries, has many loan words from Dutch?
Oh, wow.
Words related to administration technology, even food.
Really?
You can trace them back to Dutch.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So these words are little ambassadors
They are.
representing Dutch culture in these far-flung
That's right.
corners of the globe.
It really makes you wonder how many more are out there
Yeah.
just waiting to be discovered.
I know. It makes me want to go on a Dutch word hunt or something.
Right.
I'm starting to see why you find this language so captivating.
Yeah.
It really is more than just words. It's a reflection of history and culture.
It is.
And like you said, this enduring spirit of the people.
Absolutely.
But I got to ask, knowing how much it's evolved, what do you think the future holds?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Like for this resilient language.
That leads us into some really intriguing territory.
Yeah.
The future of language, is always evolving, and Dutch is no exception.
Yeah.
But to understand where it might be going, we need to look at, the forces that are shaping it today.
All right, I'm ready. Let's get into it. It's like, what are some of the key factors at play here?
Okay, so you can't really talk about the future of any language without thinking about, the impact of globalization. As the world becomes more and more interconnected, languages are.
Right.
They're constantly bumping into each other,
Yeah.
influencing and reshaping one another.
Yeah, it's like a global linguistic dance party or something.
It really is, yeah.
So how is it like affecting Dutch specifically?
Well,
Is it just like new words being adopted, or is there more to it?
I mean, that's definitely part of it.
Yep.
English being such a dominant language in so many fields has had a significant impact on Dutch. You'll hear plenty of English loanwords, especially in like technology, business, pop culture.
So like Dutch is adapting
Yeah,
and staying relevant in this globalized world.
exactly.
But is it like turning into some sort of like Dutch-English hybrid?
I wouldn't say that. Okay. While some people might worry about the, influx of English,
right.
it's really important to remember that language contact can also lead to like innovation and creativity.
Gotcha.
It's not just about one language swallowing another.
Right.
It's more like a two-way street.
Okay, so it's like give and take.
Give and take, exactly.
So while Dutch might be picking up some English flair, it's not losing its own unique character.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe it's adding some Dutch spice to English along the way.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, think about words like cookie or boss.
Exactly.
They're Dutch.
Yeah, they have Dutch origins.
It's crazy to think about how languages have been like borrowing from each other for
forever.
Centuries.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and it highlights that the future of Dutch isn't just about like adapting to these external influences.
Right.
Also about like contributing to the global linguistic landscape.
That's right.
So what can Dutch speakers do
That's a great question.
to ensure that their language continues to like thrive in this globalized world?
I think that's where the power of language communities comes in.
Okay.
The choices they make, how they use their language, how they teach it, how they celebrate it, all of that will ultimately shape its future.
So if people want to keep Dutch vibrant and ensure it doesn't get lost in the global mix, they need to actively like speak
it,
write it, and
pass it on to future generations.
It's like tending a garden.
Yeah.
You need to nurture it
Absolutely.
to help it flourish.
You hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
Language is a living entity.
Yeah.
And, the more people engage with it, the more dynamic and resilient it becomes.
This has been so eye-opening.
It has.
We've explored how Dutch went from being this like language of everyday people to, becoming a global influencer.
That's right.
We've uncovered this like stubborn streak.
Yeah.
Its ability to adapt and like its potential to shape this linguistic landscape.
Absolutely.
And you've given us so much to think about.
I'm glad.
When it comes to the future of Dutch. But I do want to ask, knowing how much Dutch has evolved, what do you think the future holds for this resilient language?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a great question, and one that leads us into some really intriguing territory.
Okay.
The future of languages is, always evolving, and Dutch is no exception.
Right.
But to understand where it might be going, we need to look at, the forces that are shaping it today.
All right, let's get into it. What are some of the key factors at play? So we talked about globalization's impact, and how English loanwords are like becoming more common.
Yeah.
But could English's influence like go beyond just the vocabulary? Could it affect like grammar or even pronunciation?
That's a fascinating question, and it's something that, linguists are keeping a close eye on.
Okay.
They're already seeing some, subtle shifts in Dutch grammar, possibly influenced by English sentence structure.
You're saying Dutch sentences might start sounding a bit more
A little bit, yeah.
English?
It's possible.
Could that happen with pronunciation too?
It's possible. I mean, think about younger generations growing up exposed to both languages through music, movies, the internet.
Right.
Their pronunciation might be, subtly shaped by this constant exposure.
It makes you wonder, like 100 years from now, will Dutch sound like totally different
Right.
than it does today?
It's an interesting thought.
But is this like Englishistification?
Yeah.
If you will.
Right.
Necessarily a bad thing?
That's where things get nuanced.
Okay.
While some people might view it as a threat to the purity of Dutch, others see it as like a natural evolution.
Okay.
A way for the language to stay relevant and adaptable.
So it's not a simple case of like
no.
English good, Dutch bad.
Right.
It's more about like recognizing that languages are these like living systems that are constantly like interacting and influencing each other.
They're breathing, they're living, they're changing.
That's a cool way to put it.
Yeah.
So the key is to like find that balance between like preserving the core identity while also allowing it to like evolve and embrace new influences.
Exactly.
But like who gets to decide where that balance lies?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it's the Dutch-speaking community.
Okay.
Who will shape the future of their language?
Right.
The choices they make, the way they use Dutch in their daily lives, the way they pass it on to future generations.
Right.
All of this plays a role.
So it's not just about like linguists and academics debating the future of Dutch. It's about like...
It's about the people.
Everyday people making these conscious decisions.
That's right.
To keep their language alive.
Exactly.
That's powerful.
It is.
It's a reminder that languages aren't these like static relics. They're dynamic expressions of culture and identity.
Absolutely.
And it's up to us, the speakers.
Yes.
To ensure that they continue to flourish.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, this has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
We've learned so much about the Dutch language.
We have.
From its origins as the language of the people to its global reach.
Yeah.
And the challenges and opportunities it faces in this ever-changing world.
Absolutely.
It's clear that Dutch has a rich history.
It does.
A vibrant present.
Yeah.
And a future that's yet to be fully written.
That's right.
So, to our listeners out there, we encourage you to continue exploring the fascinating world of the Dutch language.
Yes.
Delve into its literature. Immerse yourself in its culture.
Absolutely.
And maybe even try learning a few phrases.
You never know. You might fall in love with it.
Who knows?
Yeah.
You might even discover a hidden connection to your own heritage.
That's right.
And if you're looking for a place to start your journey,
we
highly recommend checking out our full podcast series.
Absolutely.
Understanding the Dutch.
It's a great place to start.
It's packed with in-depth discussions, interviews with experts, and fascinating stories that will give you a whole new perspective.
For sure.
On this incredible language.
We will.
So until next time, keep those ears perked.
Keep listening.
And those minds curious.
Stay curious.
Tot zines, everyone.
Tot zines.